righty. Well, we've got that taken care of, and I believe that 3 members is a quorum for us. If I'm wrong about that, please let me know. And I'll just pull up the agenda, or Michelle, if you have it and can share it, that would be wonderful. It's the 9th.
Absolutely. Give me 1 second.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I've got, and I can also share a link for anyone who needs it. Yeah, we can call the meeting to order. Uh-oh, we just lost Member Whitney, maybe.
Very quorum and just decided to just take off.
Yeah. Hopefully just dropping and coming back.
Yeah, more than likely.
Yeah,
My apologies. Switching computers.
no problem at all. Yeah, so we can call the meeting to order, and I guess the first thing to do is roll call.
Chair Knaddison.
Present.
Vice Chair Lewis. I don't see him. Member Sarno.
Present.
Member Diedrich. Okay. Member Whitney.
Present.
And Member Heller let me know that she won't be able to attend tonight. And on the call, we also have Mayor Sierra, Victor Rochelle, who is the Public Works Director, and Tim Hose, who's Deputy Director of Public Works. You have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. All righty, so up next is recognition of public comment. I don't think that there's anybody here who would fall into that category. So we can move on to approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Well, I looked them over and I thought the content was just right, so I motioned to approve those minutes.
Thank you, Member Sarno. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All righty. Sounds good. If there's any discussion, we can go ahead with that. Otherwise, we'll go to a vote.
All right, Chair Knaddison.
Aye.
Member Sarno.
Aye.
Member Whitney.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you. So next up, we have some new business, a presentation about neighborhood traffic calming. And that's, I guess, Tim Hose, go for it.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'll try to share my screen here and bring up the presentation and go over some ideas about this initiative here and get your thoughts. So let's see if I can get the presentation going here. Let's see. Here. Let's see. Are you seeing that all right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay, there we go. All right. So started here with, so this is a neighborhood traffic calming program. We've been had this on our to-do list for a while now. We've just haven't really had the staff time to do it here, but we're ready to get started, and we wanted to get the committee's feedback on how we proceed with the program and how we put it together. So we'll go over a few concepts here, and I'd like to get your feedback, and then we'll put some thoughts together and be back to the committee probably in a few months to formalize the program and get something in place. So I'll get started with the purpose of the program here is basically this has been in the city's strategic plan now for a year or two. It's under the infrastructure and transportation goals. There's one called Work Towards Completion of the Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program. And so that work begins here this evening with the committee to go over some general concepts and get your thoughts, and we'll start putting together a program, like I said. So the purpose of it is to provide some consistency in implementing the traffic calming across the city and the different strategies and how we take requests and how we evaluate them, just to make sure we're consistent and fair across the whole city, and we're not just doing things based on our just one person's opinion or anything. We want to make sure we have a well thought out process and program to implement different traffic calming ideas across the city. So next thing is kind of how I talked about the needs here. We get a lot of requests from individuals for different perceived issues or things that they're noticing, and some of them can be simple to implement, and some can be a little more complicated. So we try to pick the ones we can address and do fairly cost effectively. But we also want to take into account that not just one individual. Everybody sees things a little different. So one individual may see things differently than others, and we want to make sure we get everybody's opinion when we evaluate these types of things. And we also want to make sure we collect data that is kind of driving the decision. We don't base it on visual or just kind of intuition. We want to have data that we can use to make decisions that is valid, and that we're really solving a problem there based on the data that we're seeing. So, and then we also want to establish criteria for the use of the various treatments. So I'll go over the different treatments here in a minute, but want to have some criteria for how we implement the different things you can do for traffic calming, and make sure we have some kind of a purposeful plan there that they're implemented consistently across the city. So with that, I'll go over these the different strategies we have. As I talked a little bit about the enforcement and educational strategies, those are more the simple ones where we can do maybe some speed radar or some signage or some striping or something that's pretty cost effective to address the issue. So we have that. They usually require less than 3 months to implement. Usually cost less than $15,000. That's typically a signing and striping type of strategy or solution there. And then you've got the other 3 different types of strategies where they involve actually constructing infrastructure. So you've got the kind of the quick, the midterm, and the long term. They're just basically the difference in cost and time it takes to implement the different things. So obviously the longer term strategies are the ones that cost more and take longer to implement because there's more design work to do and more construction required. So those are the various strategies you can use to implement a traffic calming as you identify a location that looks like it warrants that type of treatment. So next slide here, these are just some examples of the types of treatments. These are some more of those kind of enforcement educational strategies that you can implement. I think you've seen a lot of these, probably the automated speed radar signs that alert drivers to their speed there and make sure they're aware of their speed in relation to the speed limit, and it usually helps to calm traffic and make people aware of their speed as they're driving. So, and you've also got the automated enforcement there, the camera there you can use. And then the blinking stop signs, another example of something you can use to just alert people to the regulatory sign or the speed limit or things like that. So there's different signage and striping things like that we can do. We've also got these next few are different more infrastructure type strategies here. They kind of go from simple to a little more complex, but we have these speed cushions. But they're basically a speed bump that has a notch out. They're actually a kind of a narrower speed bump, so emergency vehicles can get over them to make sure that there's no delay in response time or anything if we use these. Right now, the city does not have any speed bumps. Historically, Englewood is not allowed speed humps anywhere. So that would be a new strategy if it's something that we want to consider there. That's certainly an option, but it's just not something that the city's done in past years anyway. Then you've also got these pedestrian safety islands, curb extensions. These are installed at crosswalks to kind of narrow that crossing distance for pedestrians there, and it also serves to slow down traffic to kind of narrows the road there and makes it a little bit more difficult to navigate through the area. So you've got the kind of the bulb outs on either side of the street there, and then the island in the middle there that really kind of narrows that road down and really slows down traffic and makes it a little easier to cross the street for pedestrians as well. So the next thing we have is the mini roundabout. We're actually looking to install a couple of these on the East Dartmouth project that we talked about before at Logan and Downing are the two intersections around Dartmouth. We're still working on the design for these, so we're hoping to implement a couple of these in the city here in the next year or so. But these mini roundabout, really the difference in these is the roundabout itself is you can drive over it for emergency vehicles. Once again, these mini roundabouts are not big enough for an emergency vehicle to drive around the circle in the middle, so they're designed so the emergency vehicles can drive over. The larger trucks as well, delivery trucks and things, can drive right across the top there and get through the intersection still. So it's kind of a little basically mini roundabout. It's a little different concept, but it still serves the purpose to calm traffic and keep cars from speeding quite so fast through there. They've got to navigate the roundabout, and it slows them down. So. And then we've also got the chicane here. That's a little newer concept. That's basically a kind of a bulb out on one side of the road that forces drivers to kind of turn to the left and then back to the right there, kind of a jog there that slows people down and then keeps them from speeding straight through. They've got to go around the chicane there, which helps to slow traffic as well and kind of creates a kind of an artificial curve in the road for cars to have to navigate around and slow them down a little bit. So those are the main types of treatments we have, kind of the standard ones that are options for traffic calming. And I wanted to ask the committee at this point if there's any other types of traffic calming you've seen that we may want to consider for inclusion in the program there, that we might want to think about having that be an option for potentially different situations there. Does anybody have any thoughts on anything you've seen or you might want to have us look at to potentially include in the program? I don't all speak at once now. Come on.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think. I think you covered quite a bit of ground there. But I'm really thinking about if there's other applications here that possibly I've seen here. And so, but to clarify, in this city, what are some of these treatments, the existing treatments, if they exist, that's been used? I know you said there aren't any of the cushions in the city there, Deputy Director Hoos, but are there other treatments that the city has used?
So actually, I'm not aware of any of these treatments in the city right now. I don't think we've used any of these strategies at this point. The mini roundabouts would be kind of the first true traffic calming device in Englewood. I think we really haven't implemented any of these others at this point. So it's let Director Rochelle talk about that a little more.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So I don't know if it was installed as a traffic calming mechanism, but there are speed radar signs on Dartmouth. And there are also some on 285 as well. I don't know that they were installed by the city as an initiative for traffic calming, more of an awareness. Those are the only ones that I have seen currently within the city. I will tell you that my experience going back to my previous position before I joined Englewood in Aurora, these types of deployments, especially the speed cushions that have the gaps that allow fire trucks to straddle the speed cushions and not slow down. I mean, the wheel spacing is meant for the fire trucks, and passenger vehicles can't. I mean, if you try and hit the gap, you still have one set of tires that have to go over. Those were very effective, and data was collected after the fact to show reductions in speed, and the citizens really enjoyed them. And I would also add that the program was really citizen driven. So there's actually an application where the citizens apply, they get support by a neighbor or two or more, and then that is then submitted to the city. The city would then collect the data at the city's expense and then determine, is there a documented issue based on data, and then circle back with the resident, have that discussion, and then try and figure out which application out of this kind of toolbox best fits the issue at hand.
One question I had from the presentation about the automatic enforcement devices, and if those were, I'm sort of familiar with red light usage of those, and also with like a speed enforcement on South University, just north of Englewood. And I was curious if there was one or both of those that the city was particularly considering.
Yeah, I think there's one in particular. I think there's just various options there that you can use for that type of thing to, you know, kind of keep drivers aware of their speed and try to keep them to obey the law, that type of thing. But yeah, I'm not, I don't think we're proposing any kind of speed radar or anything like the intersection cameras or anything like that. It's just more for, I'm not sure, Victor, do you have any other thoughts on those cameras where they've been used in the past?
Yeah, I would add that that's really, and actually the whole traffic calming toolbox here that we're kind of talking about is really kind of a quality of life on local roadways is really the emphasis. Not so much, we wouldn't obviously put speed cushions on an arterial roadway. Thinking, you know, Broadway, 285 is actually a state highway, but you wouldn't put those there. So this would really apply to the local roads, the neighborhoods, maybe some collectors. Denver has, back to the speeding enforcement vans that they use, radar speed vans. And so we'd have to go look at code. Obviously, we'd have to involve PD if that were to be advanced. Again, I think it's just something we want to consider if this committee, and I guess ultimately council and budget, of course, right, supports that option in the toolbox. There could be some legal ramifications, particularly around that one, because it's an enforcement, right? Ticketing potential that we'd have to work through with city legal and others.
Yeah.
So I don't think we were really leaning one way or another there. We just wanted to bring it up as, hey, we know Denver does this. I'm aware Aurora is starting to do this on local roadways.
Yeah.
So it's just something to think about as a potential option.
Okay, yeah, Member Sarno, and then Mayor Sierra. I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Yes, just I had one question regarding that, the East Dartmouth improvements there. And I did receive a flyer, if you will, in the mail there for the old Hawthorne neighborhood, and pretty much linked into that, and just saw that was part of one of the links there for that project. But my question is that those mini roundabouts that are proposed, are those finalized now for that, or are they still in design or still up in the air, I guess?
Yeah, so we're just getting ready now to go to the FIR meeting, it's called, with CDOT, kind of the initial plan review to kind of get their thoughts and feedback on the design of what we're looking to do there. So there's still a few months of design left on those to finalize the geometry and things like that. So we're getting close, not quite ready to construct. We're probably at least 10 months or so away from actual construction. We're probably looking at late this year, early next year before they would be ready.
I just think, just one more comment. I just think that generally, in terms of they're looking at applying that at Logan, Downing, and Clarkson, from what I recall, correct? Those three locations.
So it's actually Logan and Downing at this point. We ran into some budget issues, and Clarkson actually doesn't have a crash history there as much as Logan and Downing does.
Yeah.
Logan and Downing are those two that have the kind of the T-bone accident history there, where we think the roundabouts can really help prevent those crashes in the future. So
yeah, and in terms of the traffic calming, that kind of serves two purposes. It does obviously calm traffic, but it's also in terms of cost savings for maintenance and so forth, when it comes to traffic signals and all that, there's probably a benefit to those roundabouts there in terms of that as well too. So that's just my own comment on that. So
yeah, one thing I would add to that, committee member, is that the nice thing about roundabouts, it also adds an element of safety because it reduces right angle crashes. And any particular incidences in roundabouts, if any, are usually kind of acute angle. So they're much more minor and have less impact financially and physically to the drivers. So they're not as severe if there are accidents. Whereas at the traffic signal, the potential for right angle, which are, high impact and very damaging, both to property and personal, are eliminated or significantly reduced with roundabouts. It's one of the big benefits of roundabouts. In addition to just level of service, right? You don't have to wait on a red light anymore. It's a yield condition. So there's multiple things there that that we're hoping to solve here with the roundabouts.
Yep, very good. Thank you.
And I guess I'll just jump in terms of the enforcement vans and enforcement cameras. Just an FYI, members of council have been against those. This group of council has been against those enforcement methods in the past. Doesn't mean that this committee cannot make that recommendation, but I know that those conversations have not gone far in the past within council. So
That's some good insight. Thank you. Yeah, Member Whitney, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so this is a great presentation. Thank you for putting this together. I don't necessarily have any additional types of treatments, and I know that was the direct question that was asked. But I did want to go back to slide 3. There were 3 bullet points. The second one is the data collection efforts. And I think if you look at the types of treatments, we could, probably say that the data collected is also what would warrant what type of treatment is used. You don't want to install traffic circles everywhere. If a blinking stop sign, if a lot of people are running stop signs, right? That's not necessarily a traffic circle situation. Maybe they're just a tree getting trimmed or whatnot. So I want to kind of get the thoughts on the data collection efforts, since it wasn't really, I didn't see it addressed later on in the presentation. So I apologize if you just hadn't gotten there, or if we needed to discuss what was actually, like, if we need to discuss what implementation is going to be used under what scenario and what that data collection effort would look like.
Yeah, Tim, do you mind if I jump in?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. And I think what we'll do is we'll bring that back to this committee as we continue to frame it up. But generally speaking, data collection will depend on the application and the concern. If it's stop sign running, we would look at turning movement counts along with visual observations to confirm that. If it's a speeding concern, what we would do is we would try and collect data when school was in 3 days a week and maybe on a Saturday as well. So it's really going to depend on the feedback that we get from the request. That'll kind of drive the data, and we'll also try and make sure we iron out any blips, so to speak. We don't want to do 1 day. That's not going to get it done. Typically, you would do at least 48 hours. We would do what's called a speed classification. So it would give us the 85th percentile, which is kind of the go-to percentile speed, as well as the classification, which is good to have. We would know if it's mostly passenger vehicles, which we would expect on local roadways, motorcycles, 18-wheelers, box trucks, Amazon, for instance, those kinds of things. So, but you're correct. That data would then inform kind of the application. And that would be, is it within the 85th percentile? Are we below? Were we above? Do we have really aggressive drivers? Then we're looking at more of the speed humps, maybe, if that's an approved tool to use to address those concerns. And then we also have to look at the engineering of the roadway. If it's a very long roadway, is one set of speed humps going to be enough? Maybe there's a combo where it's speed humps with a radar sign. And those radar signs collect data. They don't collect license plates, so there's no privacy concerns. But we can pull data from those signs and then collaborate with PD and say, hey, we pulled data. We're seeing a speeding problem at 3 p.m. on Thursdays and Fridays. If we could get some enforcement out there, that would help that conversation as well. So there's multiple ways to tackle it, but you're correct. The data really is what informs those next steps. And what we would do once we kind of continue to put some more meat on this is come back to the committee and present those.
Wonderful. I really appreciate that. I guess the other question I have is, these are all retrofitting treatments. So looking at, old roads that were wider, so you need the chicane to basically take away the width of the road because wide roads cause speeding. Have we, I guess, like going forward, I think we talked about it in the last meeting, looking at kind of how that width of the road is changing speeds, as well as different or alternative patterns of trees or vegetation, parking patterns, stuff like that, that can also lower the speed so that it isn't necessarily so prevalent that it would require this type of treatment in the long run. Anyways.
Yeah, Tim, I don't know if you want to jump in on that one. I'm happy to jump in as well.
Sure, go ahead, Victor. Yeah, Victor's got a strong traffic background, so I kind of let him take the lead on these things. We're glad to have him part of the team now. He's got a lot of history with these types of treatments and a lot of experience.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So, you're absolutely correct, committee member. So generally, we would look for those kind of easy wins to narrow the streets going forward, especially when we get development applications in. We don't have a lot of what I'll call brand new roads coming into the city. We do have some redevelopment, so there's an opportunity to maybe layer in some of these traffic calming applications with development as it comes in and redevelopment. Once we kind of get through this process, there are national data trends that show narrowing of the roadways, whether via parking, striping, or trees, just like you mentioned, do have an impact. So those are things that we will absolutely be looking at for opportunities. At the moment, Public Works doesn't have a program to go out and proactively evaluate these things from not only a staffing standpoint, but also a budgetary standpoint. But we can, and the hope is to leverage the traffic calming program as we get into that from a redevelopment standpoint to try and implement proactively as those things come in to the city.
Wonderful. That's great. I really appreciate all that information. Thank you so much. And then that just kind of, as we talk about narrowing the roads, I think as far as like traffic calming, bike lanes and protected bike lanes, I know that's like the hot topic. That's a lot of cost, and obviously that's a lot larger project. And I think that requires a SIP, right? It's basically, if we looked at, I think last meetings agenda, I believe that was part of like the capital improvement projects. We were really looking at the bike lanes. Is that part of a treatment, or is that something to consider for those longer roadways where we can also do possibly heavy pedestrian or bike traffic?
Yeah, I know our next agenda item, Tim's going to give us an update on some multimodal projects that we've got going within the city. But that could absolutely be part of that. And to your point, we have to kind of balance that maintenance aspect and making sure we're making logical connections as well. We don't want to put in a bike lane that doesn't really go anywhere on either side. Protected bike lanes, especially on high volume roads, are definitely something we're looking at. As someone who bikes pretty regularly myself, I can certainly appreciate that. I'm comfortable on the road, but if I take my kids out, I'm not putting them on the road. I'm looking for the protected bike lane or the wider sidewalk, maybe that multi-use path, if available. Converting our current sidewalk in most of the city historically is, that 3 to 5 foot, to widen that out and widen into the road as opposed to in someone's front yard is obviously a pretty expensive endeavor. So something we'll have to consider. And you also have to balance the need for parking. There's a lot of discussion, as you're probably aware, at the moment around parking on the streets and zoning for increased use on certain residential lots that could impact the need for parking. And so we certainly want to keep that in mind as well. All that to say, bike lanes are certainly not out of the question if the roadway's wide enough and we can do parking and all these other applications.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I think going back to the question about what other treatments have we seen, one thought on my mind that we had discussed at one point was the idea of I think Denver calls them bicycle boulevards, or I've also seen them called slow streets. I got to ride on the slow streets in San Francisco, and it was a great experience. And so that, depending upon the goals of the traffic calming program, that feels like a really nice potential solution to create a space that's more, like you're saying, residential appropriate, and can create a network for bikes more than we have right now. And I guess what the treatment looked like, at least in my experience, was like some like the bulb outs and center treatment that you showed on, forgetting what slide that's on. Maybe it was
It's probably that protected ped crossing, maybe.
yeah, exactly. But they were, it was like so far out that that only a bike or a pedestrian could make it through, or local traffic. So just like one car at a time, not two cars side by side, or like bollards for the right turn, so that you had to go around them really far into oncoming traffic in order to get into an area, so that it forced cars to really slow down and inspect what was going on that block before they made a turn onto the bicycle boulevard. Some other, there's tons of different ideas, I think, but just sort of forcing cars to really think and slow down before they get into a block.
Yeah, thank you for that. One thing we're going to be looking at is, I don't know how many people are familiar with NACTO, the National Association of City Transportation Officials. They're a lot more, I guess I'll say, aggressive than your typical road design. So they're looking at current trends. They have a bunch of design guidelines that they publish. So we'll certainly be looking at that as well.
All right, well, thanks for that feedback there. I'll go to the kind of the last slide here. Are you still seeing my screen here, the presentation?
Yes.
I can't tell on my end here. I'm seeing both screens. So basically, I'm just going to kind of go over our overall goals of the program and kind of what we're going to try to develop the long-term implementation of this type of program and how we want to kind of manage it. But really the goal is obviously to address the quality of life associated with traffic in neighborhoods, making sure people feel safe in their neighborhood and they don't feel like their cars are speeding past their house all the time and creating problems that way. And then we also want to really make sure we have a good public engagement process. As I mentioned before, it's very, a lot of different opinions on traffic calming. I think some neighbors might want speed bumps, some may not. There's a lot of different back and forth. We want to make sure we get public input and we get a solution that really works for the entire neighborhood rather than just one individual or something that's really going to be a good neighborhood amenity, and we don't end up doing something that one person really likes and another person may not like at all. So we're trying to make sure we have a good public engagement process as we consider these different treatments. And then we also want to obviously focus on the data that we collect as well, that we're making sure we have decisions based on data, that we're implementing things consistently based on the data and what it's telling us, what is really going to help us to improve the traffic calming ability on the different segments of roads. And then, so the idea is what we're thinking of anyway is basically we'll roll out a program and publicize it to everybody, the residents, that this is something we now have available. And if people do have concerns and they want to apply for a potential project, there we'll have kind of a list of projects that we've got applications for that we can then consider and kind of decide which ones are more viable or more realistic or budget friendly than others. And then ultimately, the idea is to have a budget amount each year for these types of treatments, that we'll have a budget request each year for a certain dollar amount that we can implement certain activities and different methods to calm traffic, and have a kind of be an annual program where we do have dedicated funding for residents that can apply, and we can actually implement some things for them and make things better. So we're hoping to make this kind of an annual budget item there, that we have funding and we can take requests and do things for traffic calming throughout the city. So those are the the main goals where we want to get to, and have a program like that people do know and are aware of and can apply for, that we can help where we can. So that's kind of the overall goals that we're looking to develop. And as Director Rochelle said, we'll kind of refine this and come up with kind of an outline and a template, I think, and come back with some more little more details and how we're looking to structure it, and get some feedback, obviously, from the Transportation Committee and then City Council as well. As we formalize the plan, we want to make sure we have input from everyone, and we have something that everybody feels comfortable with, that we can implement for the future. So I think with that, I'll just have a question slide here. Any other thoughts or comments on the kind of the structure of the program and how we want to kind of take requests and try to fund some of these things?
I did have one question on that. With the Jobs Act or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, is there a speed that we want to try and get this done quicker than sooner? Is any of that money available to us to implement any of these projects? Or is that all going to the states and then the states dole it out? Sorry for not being quite aware of how that works.
You want to go ahead, Director Rochelle?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I'll jump in. My understanding is that that's mostly being routed through the state. And so these programs and applications that we're talking about here generally would fall under that threshold. To apply for those grant funds, they come with some, I'll call it state and federal strings that you have to jump through. In my experience, you generally have to have the project cost pushing close to about 800,000 to $1 million before those strings start to really kind of pay off, given all the extra steps and processes you have to go through. So that said, there are other things. A great example, actually, I think it'll be going to City Council Monday night. We have a hawk signal, which is something that'll probably end up in the toolbox. That's a pedestrian activated traffic signal, essentially. And that was a different grant that came through, I think, Tim, that was an HSIP project, a highway safety improvement program via CDOT. So we will certainly be looking for grant opportunities to help fund some of these, but those first lower tier things that Tim was touching on, just for example, the radar speed signs are generally around $5,000 to $8,000 per install. So there are budget implications, but there are some low, and then obviously the roundabouts and speed cushions start to ramp up cost wise.
Got it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Any other thoughts or questions? Well, thank you.
Great. Thanks, folks.
Yeah, thanks for all that feedback. That does help to kind of get us started off in the right direction. We'll come back with some more refined thoughts and ideas, and get your comments as we work to get a formal program in place.
All righty. Well, the next one up is the multimodal project update.
All right, let me try to share my screen again, and I'll give you some updates on some things where we're at with certain projects. We've definitely been moving ahead on things. So let me see if this works here. Is this, are you seeing this other PowerPoint now?
We're seeing the first deck in the kind of editor mode.
No, let's see here. Is this it? Let's see if it's going to work. Is that working now?
Sadly, no.
Those are
You
still
might
the
need to
same.
stop sharing and reshare, I guess.
Maybe I'll start over here and see what happens here.
Okay.
Try again here and see if I can get it going. Yeah, different slide deck here to go through. Let's see here. Let's see here. How does that look? Any better?
Looking good. Yep.
Right. Okay, so yeah, I'll go over a few of our projects that are underway here and kind of where we're at and the things that have been progressing. But the first ones I'll talk about is the kind of the complete streets projects, where we're looking to expand the multimodal capacity of certain corridors here in the city. We've got the old Hamden between Broadway and Lafayette project that we talked about. So we've the utility work is advancing pretty well on that. We're hoping to start the utility work here this fall, late summer, early fall probably, and get that going. And we do have the grant for the complete street work has been awarded, and we're working with CDOT right now to get the IGA in place so we can hire a engineering design consultant to start putting formal plans together for the cross section that you're seeing there on the right, and start getting that. What they're going to do is explore the multi-use path a little bit more. I know last time we talked, the multi-use path is an idea, but there's some concerns there that we still need to work through. So we're still going to do a little more work on that, and we'll most likely come back to the committee with some thoughts and ideas on that to make sure we consider all the options there and make sure we're not creating any conflicts between bikes and peds by having that multi-use path there. But that is still the what the grant was based on anyway, kind of the concept that we shared with Dr. Cogman when we got the grant. So we'll continue to look at that and see what options are and how we can make that corridor better for bikes and peds and vehicles as well. So we're still moving ahead on that. The probably going to be I would say late 24 or late 25 before we'll see any construction on the actual surface improvements. It's going to take us close to a year probably to get that design done. So we are moving ahead with that anyway. And then we've also got the South Broadway project between US 285 and Bellevue there. That's the other Complete Streets grant we recently received. And that's the one where we've got the parallel bike lanes on Sherman Street going from Shenango to up to 285 there, and the little Dry Creek Trail there that goes east-west. So we do have that's getting awarded Monday. The IGA anyway is on the council agenda for Monday to approve the IGA with CDOT, so we can get a consultant going on that. But that project there will definitely have the bike lanes on Sherman. We're looking at some different bulb outs and traffic circles and things to make Sherman a little more comfortable for bikes. So we'll certainly be coming to the committee for some feedback on those designs as they take shape, and kind of get your thoughts on the different ideas and how we're looking to make that more of a bike-friendly corridor there, and how we're going to connect back to Broadway for people who want to use the bus. They can get their bike and ride over to the bus stop and continue on from there. So we'll be hopefully probably later this year. We're hoping maybe this fall we can have some concepts on that anyway to share with you, and be able to start putting some ideas together and get that design going so we can get that done. And we've also got the Floyd Avenue between Broadway and Inca. That's the one where we're going to be resurfacing and putting the bike lane on Floyd there between Broadway and Inca there. We're going to get the bike lane striped there. So that's coming together pretty well. We hope to start the mill and overlay resurfacing work here this spring, probably late spring at this point, and get the resurfacing done, get the bike lane on there. And then we at the Aladi intersection there, we'll reconfigure that a little bit to kind of make it a little more friendly for bikes and peds to get through there. Right now, it's kind of the kind of an offset there. I think my next slide here kind of shows this is kind of the design there for the Aladi intersection, how we're going to try to line up the bike lane there. So it kind of forces the bikes into a certain path there, so they're not mixing with the vehicles quite as much. And that's really, it's kind of the islands there, what's going to be reconfigured there to make it a little more clear for the bikes and peds to get through the intersection, so it's not quite as confusing there, and we have a defined path for them. So that work is a little bit delayed. The Floyd and Aladi improvements there, that was a CDOT funded project as well that we have a grant for, and we have to get CDOT's approval to award the construction contract. And it's kind of a unique situation there. The low bidder on the contract actually didn't meet the minimum disadvantaged business percentage there that they needed to have for their bid. So we had to go to the next lowest bidder, and we're working with the next bidder now to make sure they meet all of the CDOT requirements to award a contract for that. So it's put us a little behind there, but we're still hoping this probably late spring, early summer, we can get that approved there and get the contract awarded to build that as well. That'll match into the new bike lane and the overlay there going all the way from Broadway to Inca. So with that, I'll pause here. Any questions on any of those projects or anything come to mind that you want to ask about?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Chair Knaddison.
No, I didn't have anything. I'm unmuting, calling you. Go.
Okay. I did have a question. I was just looking at this slide, and I wasn't sure how the bikes go through. Like I walk and run that path quite a bit. And so I know that's a more narrow road anyways. It's a very strict 2-lane, kind of in between Aladi and Inca. And then kind of here, this is the Aladi intersection is always just a fun one. So I was kind of curious how the bikes go through each way. So if you don't mind showing, that'd be super helpful.
Are you able to see my cursor there? Can you see me moving the cursor around?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can kind of guide you through there. So the bike is going to be the bike lanes along the north here. These islands are intended to have a little refuge for the bikes there to separate them from the vehicles. They'll come around this north side here, and then they're going to come through the island here is the plan, and then they'll rejoin over on this side here. So the island is going to be the bikes will need to come through the island east-west, and then as well as north-south. This north-south piece here is the bike that's the bike route there. The bikes will come through the island and then head north. So that's kind of the directional there to kind of give them a path to get through there and more defined there rather than just wandering through the intersection. There'll be a defined pathway for them. And then we've got the pedestrian is this little green here. This is the pedestrian walkway through the island there and getting over to the other side. So this is kind of a joined bike ped refuge over here in the intersection there to get people through there and define a little better how to cross the intersection there, and it'll kind of shortens that crossing distance a little bit and stuff. So that's the kind of the layout there and the way those islands are intended to be used.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for clarifying. I was having a hard time picturing it, so thank you.
That took me a little while too to figure out when they were designing that, how that was all coming together there. It was we had to blow up that island a little bit to understand the pathway there, but it'll be a nice, kind of a safe place, kind of a refuge there with curbs and stuff to kind of protect the bikes and peds to get through the intersection and kind of keep them separated from the vehicles.
Go ahead, Member Sarno.
Yeah, just a general comment that I think this is really the projects that you outlined there, Deputy Director Hoos. I think these have been discussed through ETAC going back for quite a bit, and so I completely support. I think these projects. I think they're long overdue and quite a benefit to the community. So I don't know, Chair Knaddison, do you recall? I mean, I think this has been at least a year or two, at least, that we kind of discussed these projects. So I'm glad it's getting closer and closer to coming to fruition.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. I'm always excited to see the progress on these things.
Yeah. So that's it. Just as I mentioned, just a general comment regarding the, advancing these projects. I think it's very happy to see that.
Great. Yeah, that's nice feeling to see them done as well. There, it takes a long time to put these things together. They look simple when you get them on paper, but it definitely is a process, especially with that CDOT local agency process for the grant funding. It's a lot of scrutiny and review, and it takes a while to get here. So it's a even better feeling when we get through those and know that we've made it through and we're actually ready to build things. So we're excited about that. We'll keep moving ahead, and then I'll talk here about a few more projects here, or a couple more anyway. Are there any more questions or anything before I move on? Or?
I just have one more thing there, Deputy Director, who, since you mentioned CDOT local agency, so that the lowest bidder did meet the DBE goals, correct? That's what you had mentioned.
That's correct. Yeah, they didn't meet it there, so the CDOT wouldn't allow us to award it to them because there's a minimum DBE participation goal on the contract, and it's right there in the bid document. I'm not sure why the contractor didn't see that, but they appealed the decision. What took a while, that they appealed it, and CDOT still denied it. So we have to move on to the next bidder, which is about another $40,000. Unfortunately, it's going to cost a little more. The low bidder was low, but he didn't meet the requirements, so we can't award it to him.
Yeah, clearly if they didn't meet that requirement, then that's exactly it. So fully understand that those local agency projects, they're kind of add another dimension, another layer of their complexity and requirements and all that. So, but totally understood. Thank you.
All right, well, I'll move on to I made a whole slide about the Dartmouth projects because we've got 3 different projects going on Dartmouth right now, and I'll kind of update you on where those are all at and how things are coming along. But I think we talked a little bit already about the traffic calming between Logan and University there in the mini roundabouts, where we did have to, we were hoping to do Logan, Clarkson, and Downing with the mini roundabout treatment, but the budget kind of slapped us in the face, and we had to, we're down to just Logan and Downing right now. We're trying to fit that in. We actually were able to secure a little more grant funding for that to help cover some of the costs. So we're working with CDOT on that to make sure we can fund those fully and be able to do what needs to be done there. So those are a little bit delayed due to that, but I think we found a solution for the funding and we can move ahead. So we're going to try to keep pushing ahead on those. Then the bridge widening over the South Platte River there, we've talked about that one in the past. We did award that contract, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. City Council approved that construction contract, and we're moving ahead with the construction of that finally, and that's going to include the resurfacing of Dartmouth from Santa Fe all the way through the bridge there. So we'll get that piece there between Santa Fe and Platte River Drive that's so rough now. That's definitely needs some resurfacing. So we're excited to finally be moving ahead on that and get that road smoothed out and widened, and the bridge widened as well. So we'll have the 2 lanes each direction plus a dedicated left turn lane finally on that bridge. So that'll be nice to finally see that come together. So that's moving ahead. It should see construction start in May on that. The contractor's telling us there's going to be a full crew available in May to get started on that project for us. And then the multimodal safety west of the South Platte River there, we've got the signal replacements there, Zuni and Tejon, and then we're also going to be striping bike lanes on Dartmouth there from west of Platte River all the way to the city boundary there at Zuni there, and tie into the bike lanes going north-south on Zuni that were recently installed in conjunction with Denver. So we'll have a nice continuous bike lane all the way from the trail along the Platte River to up and connect to Zuni there for people wanting to head north on their bike. So that'll be a nice connection we'll make there. So that's that project's coming together pretty well. I'll talk in a minute here. We've got the resurfacing of Dartmouth is on this year's mill and overlay project. We're going to get Dartmouth resurfaced from the end of the bridge project all the way to Zuni. So we'll have new surfacing all the way from Santa Fe to the city boundary on Dartmouth there to the west, which will be really nice. That section's starting to show some age there, and we're excited to get that all resurfaced there. So that's coming up, and the signal replacements as well there. We're working on that one. It's that one's probably it probably won't start construction until probably late this year, early next year at this point. We're working with the railroad and stuff, and that takes a little while on that project. So we're definitely moving ahead and coming together. But this next slide I'll talk about here is a little more about that Hawk signal there on Broadway there. So we've done some, in addition to the Hawk signal, we've done some inspections of all the traffic signals in the city to make sure they're structurally sound, and we found a few that need some help there. There's some structural concerns on a couple of them that we're going to address and make sure that they are strengthened or replaced there so that there's no danger of them failing or anything like that. So we've got a few of those. We're working on a project to replace some of the signal equipment and make sure we don't have any corroded poles or anything like that. We're working on that, and that's going to come together here. Hopefully this year we'll do some of that. It's not a big project, but definitely an important one to make sure our signals stay structurally sound and functioning. So then the South Broadway Hawk signal on the right there, that's kind of a picture of a Hawk signal there and kind of the look of that. But it's that one is, we're hoping to build that one probably late this year. We've got the IGA with CDOT for that one's on the Monday City Council agenda as well for approval. So once we get that approved, we can hire the consultant to get that design done, and we can hopefully start construction here later this year on that and get that installed. And that'll be a lot safer for that crosswalk there on Broadway where the rapid flashing beacon there is just not quite having the impact we hoped. Vehicles don't seem to stop as much at that, so we're hoping this Hawk signal is going to be more of a defined signal there and then make people stop so it's safer to cross Broadway there and we don't have any potential issues with pedestrians and vehicle conflicts or anything like that. So that's one we got coming up here pretty soon. And then this last slide I'll go over real quick. I just wanted to give you a little preview of these are kind of the streets we're looking to pave this year. These are the mill and overlay streets that we have we're scheduling for paving this year. We've got you see the Dartmouth piece there west of the bridge. We're going to get all of that resurfaced, and that'll be where that bike lane goes. So that's going to happen this summer here. We're on track to get that bid out here pretty soon and construction this summer. But the other two exciting pieces are we've got Broadway scheduled this year too. Broadway is one of our lowest rated streets for the pavement condition index. So we've got Broadway between Yale and Dartmouth. We're going to be resurfacing this year, as well as the south end of Broadway there, kind of the far north boundary of the city and the far south boundary of the city. We did a little bit of Broadway last year, south of Bellevue, and we're going to continue all the way to the city boundary and finish that off there, kind of by the car dealers down there by the John Elway Chevrolet and stuff. That's the last little bit we need to do to finish up that south end of Broadway, and then we get this north end. And then the other plan is once we get the South Broadway complete street project done between 285 and Bellevue here, we've allocated funding. We think we've got enough to be able to pave this whole segment as well once we get all the ADA improvements done and the bus stop improvements and bus pads, we'll be able to resurface that whole segment there and really make it look nice. It'll be a multimodal corridor there and upgraded ramps and pedestrian facilities and things and bus stops. It's going to look really good when we're done. We're excited to be moving ahead on that. That's going to be a nice improvement there. So it's all tying together very well how we can get the complete street and the resurfacing done. We're excited we can bring all that together. So those are all the streets, and then the other streets. These are mostly up in the northwest part of the city here, and then that kind of that industrial commercial area up there. That's kind of the zone 5 we're focused on this year, the pavement zone 5, which is our kind of, they call it the hill, I guess, up there, kind of the one hill in Englewood, the one sloped area in Englewood there. So we've got a lot of streets up there need some attention this year, and they're scheduled, as well as a little bit down here in the southwest part of the city, kind of west of Federal. We've got some of those that are due for maintenance there. So these are the streets we're working on. We hope to have a construction contract awarded here within the next couple months and get started on the paving for this year. So that's about all I got for the project updates. I can answer any other questions you have on those or any other projects you're curious about. We've got several going. I just kind of highlighted a few of the bigger ones that are a little bit newer and let you know where we're at. But happy to answer any other questions about project, where we're at with things.
This is so very exciting. I really appreciate all the updates. Really excited to see Dartmouth get worked on, especially in that section that is just notoriously not great. So really excited for that. I did just have one question. You mentioned just kind of doing Broadway. I don't know if we've gotten an update on the bridge project on Hampton and Broadway in a minute. So I was just curious if you had any update there since we're talking about the Broadway corridor.
Yeah, that one's a sore spot there. That's a tough one. We're about $6 million short in funding on that, and we're trying to come up with a way to. We're hoping to get some additional grant funding somehow. If we can get some more grant funding to bridge that gap, so to speak. I guess I should say it that way. But that funding gap on that one is pretty large now, so we really haven't been able to make a lot of headway with that. CDOT's not really willing to come to the plate with more funding at this time. We tried to see if we could get CDOT to contribute a little bit more to share in that cost, and at this point they're kind of indicating they don't have any additional money to fund that either. So we're trying to come up with different ways to fund that. I think Director Rochelle had an interesting idea where we're talking to finance a little bit about possibly with the additional sales tax money we got for the road maintenance, maybe we can do some kind of bond on that or something to get a little bit more money up front to help bridge some of that gap on that project and be able to make it a reality a little bit sooner. But otherwise we're searching for some funding solutions on that one at this point, and hoping we can still move ahead within the next couple years or so if possible.
Got it. Thank you so much for the update. Yeah, sorry to bring up a sore spot. Not my intention.
Yeah, that one was a lot of work to get suddenly just stopped all on a dime and say, oh my gosh, we never thought the bids would be that much higher. The construction costs have kind of escalated a little bit more on the bridge projects than we have anticipated for sure.
Yeah, if I could jump in real quick, Tim, on that one, we have been touching base with Dr. Cog on the grant, and we have met the obligation date for that project. So at the moment, we're not at risk of losing the grant funds from Dr. Cog. So we're going to continue to keep the conversation going with Dr. Cog. They understand there's some financial constraints that we're dealing with. And so we're going to keep a pulse on that as we continue to look for solutions. And as Tim mentioned, just to quell any fears, I was just talking to finance generally about, hey, if we carved out a small piece of potential funding and bonded against that, obviously we want to use the vast majority of that incoming road maintenance money for road maintenance right now as soon as possible, because we've got some road maintenance to do. If that's a potential solution, we're just trying to look at all avenues, and of course we come back to the committee and council before we do anything. So
yeah, definitely we wouldn't use all that money, but yeah, we're trying to find every solution we can and get as creative as we can. And yeah, we do have $7.5 million in grant funding, and as Director Rochelle said, we did make sure that is secure and we have time to evaluate our options, and we're not in danger of losing the money we already have, which is a good thing. So we're just trying to explore any option we can to try to get some more funding funneled to that project so we can make it happen, because it is that was a large effort to get us where we're at now. We want to try not to lose too much momentum on that and try to get it done so we can get that widened out. So.
Alrighty, any other
Any
thoughts or
questions about
questions?
any project?
Yeah. Alrighty, seeing none. The next item on the agenda is Englewood Trolley Route plans. That was something that Member Lewis had requested get placed on the agenda. And since he's not here tonight, I think we should probably skip it. I don't know if anybody, if anybody wants to talk about it, we certainly can.
Yeah, we've actually got a response for that if we want to read it. We talked to community development about that. It's not a great response, but it's basically there's no funding to expand the route. But yeah, we did inquire about that, and it sounds like RTD doesn't have any additional funding to help us out with that one either right now. So we're kind of in a holding pattern there as well. Let me see what the I can look up the quick response here and let you know what we said here. But we did get some feedback anyway. Let's see here. Let's see what's here.
I think just to give some more context before the response. So Member Lewis got a request, I think, from someone in the city who is interested in making sure that nonprofits and the people who are going to visit those nonprofits are able to get there reasonably well. And I think it was more of a north-south mode of travel. So like if you can get east-west on the trolley, right? But what if you need to go north-south? Well, there is the RTD on Broadway, but that might not be accessible to everybody, financially accessible. And so what they were sort of curious about the possibility of expanding the route. And I may have missed some details or misstated, but that's what I understood.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to be doing a feasibility study this summer to kind of look at other funding options and expanding the route and kind of do service on demand rather than a fixed route and that kind of thing to see if there's some different ways they can service things a little better.
Excellent, I appreciate that. Alrighty, well, any other thoughts or questions on that one? Okay, thanks.
Actually, Chair Knaddison, I'll bring something up. Nothing's really come of it, but I know Sheridan has expressed interest to me to have the trolley make its way to River Point at some point. It's been something that they've been wanting to do for a while. Obviously, the funding is the big thing that we're looking for. So I'll reach out to my contact in Sheridan to find out if they've made any headway with Dr. Cog or any other with CDOT or anybody else that may be able to provide funding. But that conversation happens towards the end of last year, sometime around October, I would want to say. So, but we'd be interested to take it down that route if it leads us to Oxford and that type of thing as well. So.
Definitely, yeah, that's an interesting idea. If they, having it serve more areas could help to provide like service to the spaces in between, which might be useful. So that seems great. Okay, up next, Director's Choice.
Director Rochelle, do you want to go first? I got a couple items that I can share with them.
Sure, I'll jump in. Thank you, Chair. So just wanted to say thank you for the meeting tonight, being new to the city. Just quick introduction. I think I did a little bit in the beginning, but coming up on 3 months here, coming from Aurora. As Tim mentioned, I have a strong transportation and traffic background. So really enjoy these conversations. I'm very passionate about traffic, transportation, multimodal, particularly around biking, as someone who bikes pretty regularly myself when I can. So these are all very exciting topics. So just really glad to hear the discussion tonight and look forward to future discussions. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, great to get to know you. Thank you.
All right, well, I'll mention a couple of things here. Just a reminder there on next month, April 24th is the joint meeting with the other commissions to go over the CIP for 2024. So kind of keep that on your calendar there to, I think it's going to be a virtual, kind of a hybrid thing, virtual or in person, I think you can do. So it's, that's on Monday, April 24th. Just keep that on your calendar there to be there to see the proposed 2024 CIP requests. And then our meeting in May, most likely we'll get this committee together to kind of go over your priorities and what you want to recommend as far as which ones you would recommend having funding go towards first. Like we've done in past years, there we'll put the project list together and kind of let you break it down into priorities so we can give a recommendation from this committee as to what you think is highest priority to be funded in the future. So then we also have the Code Next project is working its way through, as you know, the kind of a lot of public interaction on that with council and stuff lately, but there is going to be a joint meeting with all the commissions as well to go over those proposed changes and get your feedback on that. So from what I understand, that initially they were going to kind of try to go to each commission and committee, but there's quite a few of them. So the latest I'm hearing is it's going to be a joint meeting with all the commissions similar to the CIP meeting. So that look for news on that here probably in the next month or so as well to participate in that and give some feedback on those proposed changes, and so we can make sure your feedback and thoughts are incorporated into those updates as well. So that should be, I don't have a date on that, but I would expect in the next month or so we'll have a date to get you together there to give some feedback on that and kind of see a presentation on what's being proposed there and what they're looking to change, so you can weigh in on that as well. So I think those are the two things I had to share with you.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, I've definitely been hearing some about the Code Next work. So thank you all for folks working on it. It seems like some good improvement potential. Next up is Chairperson choice. I don't have anything that I really wanted to bring up tonight. And so I guess we'll go to Member Sarno. If you have anything that you were hoping to talk about tonight.
Yeah, not anything too consequential, but just an observation. There's a couple of, I guess, and I don't know if there was some sort of utility failure, or, sometimes there's a water break or something like that happens in the roadways. And then of course there's a crew out there and they're cutting out what would be a square rectangle of asphalt in the roadway. And then they go to backfill it, and with the weather and so forth, and sometimes their approaches or techniques of backfilling it doesn't quite, have a level surface. And then on top of that, they're putting back road base, but ultimately at some point it'd be nice to get asphalt patched back as well too. And there's two locations that I'm thinking of. One is on Dartmouth as you're going eastbound. I think it's just east of Downing as you go there. And then also on Oxford as you head west from Broadway. So, and it's not so problematic, but I do ride a motorcycle, and sometimes you come up on that, it makes for a good traffic calming device, but it's also kind of hazardous as well too. So I just want to say that at some point it'd be nice to get those patched back with some asphalt.
Yeah, those are actually scheduled to be patched back next week. We finally got something in place there. The weather's been really holding us up on this. Winter's been pretty hard on us, and it's been difficult to get the crew over there, but we actually we're looking at getting another contractor to help us out and catch up on those, because we are a bit behind on that. So we are aware of those, but that's an interesting thought. I never thought about those as being traffic calming, but they could be dangerous as well. So we definitely are going to get those filled in, because we know those ones, especially Oxford and Dartmouth, those are some pretty busy streets. So those are top priorities to get done. So I'll let Director Rochelle weigh in on that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I was going to say the same thing, that those are a priority for us. We're trying to keep an eye on them to make sure, because that road base kicks out over time with the tires running over it. I will comment and say that will not be in the traffic calming toolbox. So.
All right, very good. We can agree on that one.
That's one of those ambush traffic calmings there. You come up on it. What the heck is it?
Yeah, I don't think our legal department that wouldn't sit well.
Right.
Yeah, I think we'd be a little liable if we left holes in the road.
Yeah. It is. It's just very challenging, because even if a contractor initially grades it out perfectly, but it's road based, and ultimately with that rock, it just kicks up over time. It just turns into kind of a slick gravel surface, if you will, for motorists and cyclists and so on. So yeah, just an observation. Thank you for bringing, attending to it, addressing it.
Sure, yeah, that is something once we get caught up, we hope to stay caught up now that the weather's kind of stopped messing with us. That snow there in January, February just really put us behind with the patching and stuff.
It seemed like to be on a auto repeat every Wednesday, I think, or something like that, that it just could come and do that. So fully aware. Thank you. That's all. Yeah, that's all I have. Chair Knaddison. Thank you.
Thanks. And Member Whitney?
Yeah, I don't have much. I do know we have a lot of larger buildings being built at this point. So housing, residential buildings. So I live by Winslow Crane, what used to be Winslow Crane. So obviously there's that large apartment complex. So that's going to change the traffic pattern. Possibly. I know there's garages at the first floor, but I'm not sure how many residents are supposed to get garages versus not. And then also by movement, there's a large apartment complex, I believe Englewood Center is what they're calling it. And then 3 blocks over is another large housing complex or development of some sort. So nothing at this time particularly, I'm sure you guys are aware, but I could imagine that the increase in traffic is going to be not necessarily substantial, but we'll see something. So that might change some of those traffic patterns in the area, whether it's people getting off Dartmouth, coming up Fox Street or Galapago actually, or people going down behind the Burger King and the VRCC and et cetera. So just trying to keep an eye on that, and maybe we'll talk next meeting about that, just to see if there's any actual changes, or if people were all using bikes, then we're great. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I've been watching those projects as well. I'm wondering what changes. I feel like also the block or two just north of 285 from, like Broadway over to, I guess where the Hamden project, mobility project that you showed earlier, Deputy Director is going in. That's an area in a lot of transition right now as well. Lots of interesting changes coming, and there's an apartment at the end of it, right? The old mortuary is getting replaced with an apartment building over there. Yes. All righty. Well, Mayor Sierra, anything you wanted to bring up?
Not much. It's good to be back, guys. I know that we've had a couple months off of this, but I guess the one thing I do want to mention, since Code Next came up, I'm going to have a town hall about the Code Next project next Thursday, a week from today, starting at 6 o'clock at the Malley Center. So if anybody wants to hear the latest and greatest on that, yeah, we'd love for you guys to attend. Thank you.
Sounds good. Well, I think that's the end of the agenda for tonight. Just pause there for anyone to disagree with me. And with that, we'll call the meeting adjourned. Okay, thanks, folks.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. See ya.